Hey, welcome back to Cedar Studios. In my last video about combining Astro and CodeStitch, I got some questions about whether you can combine Tailwind and CodeStitch styles. And the answer is yes, you can combine Tailwind with any CSS system. And today I'll show you a little bit about how to do that. So on the left, I have a CodeStitch hero section that I'm going to put in my project. And on the right, I have an Astro project ready to go. You could use any static site generator. You could use no generator at all, and this would still work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the code for the HTML, and I'm going to drop it here in my project. Now if I check the server, yep, it's here. It's not styled. So we will put in the CSS in Astro. You just open up a style tag, drop it in there. And now this looks good. It's missing a couple things because it's missing CodeStitch's core styles. Last time, I just threw it right here in the style tag, but this time I'll show you how I set up an actual project. I like to use a feature called Layouts. So I'll make a new folder called Layouts, and a new file, and we'll call it base layout.astro. And what's going to happen is I'm going to be able to take my index page and just route the HTML that I write into it through whatever I put in the base layout. This is also something that Eleventy does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this HTML boilerplate stuff. I'm going to put it in here in my layout. And then here, where I want everything from my index file, I'm going to put in a slot tag, which is Astro's way of saying, okay, anything that you send to the base layout is just going to appear right here. It's going to appear between my body tags. And in the index file, I just have to make sure I direct it towards the base layout. So what I will do is import base layout from layouts/base layout. And then I will open up a base layout tag and put this HTML in. And so if I jump back to my project, it's working, everything looks the same. Just need to drop in these core styles. So I'll copy those. I will come here. I can do a style tag if I want. Another solution I can use is my own CSS file. So I'll do that. I will make a new folder and call it styles. And I'll make a file called global.css that I can reference anywhere that I want, including if I have more layouts. I'll drop this in. And then I have to connect it to the base layout. And you also do that in the front matter of an Astro project. So I would say import from styles global CSS file. Now if I go here, yep, everything's working just as I planned. I like to change the font to the system just so it, it's not that sans serif font. That's a little unusual to look at. Okay, let's get started on Tailwind. So I need to add the Tailwind integration to Astro. If you're not using Astro, you just have to figure out whatever Tailwind installation works for your system. Astro makes it super easy. Astro add Tailwind, and that's it. What it's going to do is it's going to install the node package in my project. Then it's going to make a Tailwind config file, which I can edit some stuff. And then it's going to add the Tailwind integration into Astro. And so I'm done. Astro's working. It's going to restart this dev server. Okay. And now let's get started. So I have this hero section. Let's make a new section. And we can make an H2 and say new section. And we can make a paragraph. Actually, let's do this. Paragraph lorem 100. This is a fun emit trick in VS Code. You do that right caret and then lorem and then the number of words you want, and it generates some lorem ipsum text. I use this all the time. Okay, so let's start styling up the section. Let's give it some padding on the top and some padding on the sides. I'm not going to go a lot into these Tailwind classes. There are lots of Tailwind videos that are really good that you can start to learn this stuff. Okay, so you can see that's applying and it hasn't affected anything on here in the CodeStitch components. The H2 you'll notice is just the same size as the regular text. That's another Tailwind thing. It's called pre-flight. It resets all the base styles. So what I could do is I could style every H2 in my project to be bigger and have a bold font face. Or what I could do is I could change my base styles. So what I would do in my global CSS is at the top I would get a hold of these base styles by doing tailwind base. And this is all in the Tailwind docs, by the way, if you are familiar with it. And at the bottom here, I'm going to add layer directive and modify the base for the H2s. And in here, I'm going to go back and I'm going to get rid of this. Now in here, I can use regular CSS. So I can change the font size to 32 pixels, and I can change the font family. Or I can write in Tailwind if I want. In the CSS file, if I use the apply directive, now I can say text 3XL, font semi-bold, and it'll style all the H2s so that I don't have to write something new every time. So that's just a little Tailwind trick. Okay, so adding Tailwind seems to be not quite a problem. Now let's look at how we might modify some of these CodeStitch components. So I'm going to collapse that and come back in here, and let's look at this button right here. So can I add Tailwind classes right here and override some of these? The answer is sort of. If I want to add something new, maybe I want to add a shadow and I want to make it white. We can do that. Let's make it like a large shadow, and let's make it not quite white. Okay, there we go. So I can add some styles to these components using Tailwind alongside this class, which lower down you'll see has a bunch of CSS written to it. Here's where there's a problem. If I want to overwrite these styles, Tailwind's not going to take precedence here. So if I do, for example, background color green 700 and save, it didn't apply. Now, partly this is an Astro thing. These classes have a lower order of appearance, as Astro calls it, than the CSS and the style tag. If you weren't using Astro, if you were just using plain HTML CSS with Tailwind installed, then it would get down to specificity of what applies first. If I really wanted to, I can add the important tag in Tailwind, which is just the exclamation point, and that will change it. This isn't my favorite thing to do. I don't like to use important tags when I don't need to, because I know that there are two styles somewhere in my code base fighting each other, and it gets confusing later on when you have lots of components and you start making changes. Why didn't this change? So I would recommend, if you want to change styles in CodeStitch, it's kind of hard to rely on making new styles and knowing that they're not applied somewhere down here. So I would say just anything in CodeStitch you want to do, just come down to the CSS and make the changes here. You can also make those changes in Tailwind if you want. So let's get rid of these. Let's go to the CS solid button class. Let's find that. Okay, here we are. Here's the background color. It's got that var of primary. What I can do is I can get rid of this, and I can write my Tailwind right here if I want. And it'll apply because I'm using this apply directive. So I can use Tailwind and combine it with CSS. That might not be the cleanest solution, but it's one way to keep writing Tailwind in here. And then the last thing I want to show you, so obviously new Tailwind works great. Manipulating existing styles in CodeStitch, I would avoid. I would just use CSS. It's okay to use both in one repository. But then if you wanted to add something new, like if I wanted to add a card, for example, this would be perfectly safe to use Tailwind for. So I can have a div, and let's say I want to give it like a max width of extra small. I want to center it, give it a border. Border can be like slate. Give it some padding. Give it like a nice see-through background with a backdrop blur. That should be good for now. And then in here I can give it a card title, and that card title can be like a larger and bold font. And then I put in a little lorem text. Okay. So that's looking pretty good, you know. I might add a couple styles, margin to the top, make all the text white, etc. So you can add whatever you want in Tailwind to a section in CodeStitch. You just want to be a little bit careful if you're going to try to manipulate an existing element, as you're going to have styles fighting each other. So as you can see, CodeStitch and Tailwind for the most part play really nice together, and Astro makes it super easy to combine these two if you want to write a website in Tailwind, if that's your go-to like it is for me, but you still want to use some of the really nice components that are pre-built in CodeStitch. All right, if you have any questions about this or you want to see more like this, let me know in the comments.